In this episode, we speak with Mat Zucker, senior partner at Profit, who is also serving as the chief marketing officer of the firm. Mat brings nearly 30 years of experience in digital marketing, advertising, content, and social strategy, and previously co-led Profit's global marketing and sales practice across industries. Mat was recognized as one of the top 25 marketing and sales consultants and leaders of 2024. Profit is a global consulting firm known for driving uncommon growth through strategy, creativity, and digital expertise, serving some of the world's most iconic brands across 15 global offices. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Mat, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Terrific to meet you.
So I have to ask about your time in Cornell, because I think you set a Guinness World Record potentially, or that was associated with maybe some of the organizations you were involved with. Was there some massive lasagna day that you were a part of?
Yes. Thank you for noticing. It was my real early entree into the crazy world of marketing. I led the student-run advertising and public relations firm, and a Cornell alum had graduated and gone to a public relations firm, and she was working for a company called Shade Pasta. And their idea was to break through the clutter. They couldn't out advertise, so you could use PR as a powerful tool. And could they use this no-boil lasagna? It's so good, you could make the world's largest lasagna because you didn't need to boil the noodle. So it was kind of a proof of concept of the product. So they came back to their school, Cornell, and I ran the PR and the advertising. My logo was a giant fork. And the hotel school helped manage it. The fraternities helped do the barbecue. And we did the world's largest lasagna. We got in the Guinness Book of World Records temporarily. We were barely in before another team the next year in Ireland, I think they made a meatless lasagna. It was a little easier to do. I think we did a meat lasagna, which was much more rigorous.
Uh-huh. And it struck me that very early on, you tapped into what you really are good at and enjoy doing, which is being creative. Did you find that that was always the case with you, like maybe even earlier in high school or childhood, that you could think creatively to break through the noise?
I got into marketing a lot because I liked this mix of business and creativity. And I wasn't really, I think, a good enough writer to become like a poet. So I found advertising. And I got really addicted to it really early on. I didn't even realize it was a bigger world of marketing. I thought advertising was marketing. I know people use the word interchangeably sometimes, but it's not. It's just one lever. And so I got into it by really liking to do creative problem solving in short bursts. So I think it was kind of natural. And I think my first job, I was doing radio advertising, which was a great preparation for other kinds of formats like audio and podcasting later on in careers.
And we'll talk about your career. You have an amazing background. And when you start talking to a company, let's say a management team, and you look at what they're doing for their products or services and how they're positioning it, do you kind of immediately see opportunity? Like, I see how you're positioning yourself, but you could do X, Y, Z to immediately improve your positioning and awareness in the market.
I think when I was in advertising, working agency side, I would go right to the answer very quickly. And I'd be right or wrong. 50% of the time you're right or you're wrong. And there's usually a clear problem that's identified. What I found that was so different when I moved into consulting about 11 years ago and more of a management consulting approach to problem solving was you don't go so fast. You listen a little longer, you ask more questions, you start thinking out loud, and you share hypothesis, but you might have like 3 ways of thinking about it. I just learned there's a very different dialogue and a way of problem solving versus my old self would jump to an answer. These clients are still impatient, so you want to move fast, but I do find the better questions lead to better answers.
Mm-hmm. What's the most creative piece of work that you've done where you look back and say, wow, that was actually pretty neat that we did that?
I don't know if it's the most creative. I thought one of the most interesting, robust was for, do you know the world of Japanese anime,
Yeah, a little
Funimation
bit.
and Crunchyroll? I hadn't really worked in the category before, but a client hired us, and this was early on in my Profit career, and they were really transforming. They were evolving from more of a CD-ROM, DVD world to a more digital streaming world, right? This is like 2015. So we had different audience needs, different product shifts, different pricing shifts. So the assignment was to rethink its value proposition for its audiences, shift the customer experience to meet the new platform and the new needs, grow the audience, so really marketing acquisition problems, rethink pricing. So it really was a robust marketing customer experience transformation assignment that went over about 2 to 3 years. And a lot of it led to actually that they sold to Sony. So that was pretty exciting that there's a culmination, of the effort. They hit the numbers that they needed to for a successful sale. And it was great fun. There's nothing more fun than working in like the entertainment world or working in the anime world, which is hilarious. Our first day was on Halloween. So we showed up like a bunch of consultants and everyone else is dressed up as their favorite characters. We looked ridiculous.
What I hear sometimes from consultants is that you do analysis and you present your work to the client, and sometimes they adopt your advice and sometimes they don't. It seems like in this case, they did adopt your advice. But do you also find the same thing? And I would tell, like, my wife's a former consultant, and I would say, well, but it's still valuable, even if they don't adopt your advice, because it's information for them. They know, like, okay, that's the path that we now understand, and we're not going to go down.
Yeah, strategy is choices, right? So if you can help people figure out what their options are or their choices, whether they do it or not, if they execute it well or not, you've done part of your job. I mean, we've tried to build a firm at Profit that takes it off the page, that goes from the insight and the ideas into the execution and the market impact, either with us or making it so actionable that it's useful, for others to run with. So the shame would be is if you do ideas, but they're not actionable and not useful. I mean, a lot of us have been seeing other firms that do like a segmentation and then it's not really usable when you actually try to use it and you have to like redo it. And so that's kind of maddening. But if you can try to at least, whether you're going to execute or not, set someone up for the success, for that they're able to act on it, that they know what they're getting into, it's much more gratifying.
Going back to your days at Cornell, I was curious, like, what was the image of Cornell then? What do you think it is today? It's interesting. And I went to Cornell for business school, so I have
Oh,
a
cool.
little bit of a vested interest there. It seems like it has like great reputation globally. Maybe within the States, folks are like very discerning and they're like, okay, here's the top 5 schools. Curious if you dealt at all with Cornell branding when you were part of that PR internal agency and kind of what you think about it today, the brand.
When I was there, Cornell finally was unifying. I remember watching as it unified its logos and really set some consistency for itself. So I remember that was a thing. I didn't realize how disparate it was. So look, I come from a big Cornell family, and my husband's family also Cornell. So like we're crazy Cornell people. So I think it's the greatest brand in the world. And I think its programs are just really interesting and unusual. It has programs that no one else has. Ezra Cornell set up a place where anyone can learn about anything, whether it's like sheep farming or the hotel administration or one of the best English departments, in the world that can go toe to toe with all the best schools. It's expanded in that it's more global now than it was. It's more New York City than it was. Back then, it was just the medical school in New York, but it's really grown its footprint in New York. It merged the medical school hospitals with Columbia. It also did the joint venture with Technion and has Cornell Tech in New York on Roosevelt Island, which is really a strong program. It's brought more of the business school offerings into New York City as well. So I think it's expanding its footprint both regionally, not just be in Ithaca, right, but also globally around the world. So it gets a bad rap in the Ivy League, but it gets a good rap everywhere else.
Okay, and then now let's go into your career because you've done a lot of interesting things. Tell us what happened after you graduated.
Well, I wanted to go into advertising and I wanted to be a copywriter. I had no aspirations, as they say, like no one wants to be a consultant. Like that's not a thing. Like you don't grow up. You want to be a fireman, right? And I wanted to be a copywriter. I wanted my ads on TV. So I got a job as a secretary in an advertising agency in New York, a big one called FCB, Foot Cone and Building. And I worked my way up. I went to night classes for my portfolio, and I rose up through the creative ranks as a copywriter and then a creative director. And digital was just taking off, early websites. So they gave it to me because everyone else wanted to do TV commercials. So give Zucker to the website thing. Like, who wants to do that? So I got in really early, and I was really lucky. And what happened was I developed a knack for performance marketing and not just brand advertising. So I think that really helped me. I'm a big advocate of brand and demand. I built a lot of my career doing both. So I have a vested interest in both. So I would later go on to digital agencies and performance agencies, as well as stay in brand advertising, that kind of world too. So I moved around. We all get laid off in advertising. No one wants to hear this, but it's true. So I would freelance different places. But then I went to Ogilvy, and most of my career in advertising was at Ogilvy, which is kind of a preeminent teaching hospital for advertising. It's always been an iconic brand. And through different various turns, it can be highly creative or highly strategic. It can be both. And so I really kind of grew up in a very strong world of integrated communications. I would go back and forth between digital agencies and advertising agencies because I love the innovation of digital firms, but I liked kind of the sophistication of advertising. I did a little dip in promotions. I did different areas of marketing, and I like being kind of well-rounded. I have a love for PR and public relations as well, even though I've never worked for a public relations firm. But at some point, I felt very maxed out. I kind of rose to chief creative officer, which is kind of the ultimate dream job as a creative, at least on paper, of a large agency office. I had like 70 creatives under me. It was a phenomenal global job. It was great. Went to Cannes, was a judge, did all the things you're supposed to do, except win a Grand Prix. I haven't won a Grand Prix. But then I was kind of maxed out. I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? I really want to do something else with my life. And I stayed in touch with Chan Su, who's the founder of agency.com. And we had lunch one day, and I'm like, I don't want to be a creative director anymore. I've done this. I want to be a businessman. And he's like, well, have you ever thought about coming upstream? And he had just joined Profit, which I knew well. And I'm like, and upstream, what's, the logo people? Like, what is upstream? Are those the people that do that segmentation I ignore? Like, what is that? What is that world? He's like, no, you'll love it. You get in earlier. You get in before the brief. The chief marketing officer that you would practice for your meetings once a month, you'll talk to every day. You can meet the entire C-suite as part of an engagement, but you're in earlier. And I was really craving making a more indelible impression than some of my ephemeral communications. So I took the leap and I came to Profit about 11 years ago, and we helped build out digital marketing first, digital customer experience. And then I co-led the marketing strategy practice for 5 years. We merged capital M marketing with digital marketing, and just had marketing and sales practice. And then the most recently, I became the chief marketing officer for the firm. And so in addition to client work, I'm actually also my own client. I'm practicing what I preach, which is kind of fun.
I imagine at Ogilvy, you were covering all types of industries. Is it the same now, or do you focus on certain sectors?
No, I'm pretty broad. Profit's pretty broad. A fair number of our business is deep in financial services, healthcare, and some certain categories. So there are people that are more industry experts, but I've always been very broad across industries. They definitely spike a little bit in areas that I've problem solved in, whether it's like telecom or entertainment or financial services and healthcare. But I consider myself a broad person. I've always wondered what it would be like to be really, really, really good at a narrower thing, like the expert in X, Y, and Z. I bet that must be really cool to be called in to do that and to stay on top of it, because it's hard to stay broad and be deep. But I kind of like it. I like the variety.
It seems like one can't escape a commercial about insurance, some type of insurance companies, and they're all quirky. Is that something that's just like you can't have a boring insurance ad? It has to be super quirky. Do you find that that's just what the industry is doing?
I think all industries come in waves and things, and there's a lot of copy breaking through, and people start to expect it. But I think it's what the customer expects, right? So if you're raised on, Geico, and you're raised in that kind of humor, and then so you want a little bit of funny, you enjoy it. So Liberty comes out with its humorous take and flow, right? So I think it becomes a genre, but that doesn't mean you have to. In fact, to cut through, well, maybe serious would work. Maybe something else, a different kind of thing would work. In other categories, humor wouldn't work, but the customers has kind of been either trained or expects that. But you'll see somebody else break through in a different way to be different. Differentiation's not enough. You need to be relevant, right? So first you have to be relevant. So humor can be relevant, and then how do you differentiate? So if you're going to be humorous and relevant but not differentiate, you're probably only 50% there.
And where would the consultant's role start in terms of, say, a Capital One where they're using certain themes and celebrities. And partly it's the agency that's doing the work, but where does the consultant come in on that picture if they're advising the CMO or the CMO suite or, department? Like, is it at the very high level, you would say, in this hypothetical scenario, Capital One CMO, I think you should start thinking about slightly repositioning the way you're projecting the brand and its value proposition in the broader market.
I think you might start with what the challenge or the opportunity is. For example, are you going after a new customer? And if so, what do they need? So before you even get to the how, you start with the why and the what. What are their needs? And what's the unmet needs? What needs do they have that no one has met yet?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you'll find some white space. Or how do you differentiate within the space you want to go deeper into? So I think you start there. And if you're customer driven, you can't be wrong, right? Like if you're really letting them look at that too. You also want to look at where the ball is going. So you want to be future forward and then future back and then work back from that, not just look at the past. I think too many people look at the past and don't look at where the ball is going too. And then you can identify what's possible, right? Is it the brand voice? Is it the brand expression? Is it the value prop? Is it the pricing? Is it a customer service offering? The consultant puts more of the game boards on the table and then starts to figure out the levers. And then, different specific agencies, or maybe the consultant works in some of them like we do, will help be part of the answer. But you really got to start with what's possible and what meets the unmet need. And then you would see what happens if I do X, Y, or Z. A lot of us do scenario planning as well. Is like, if we go this route, what might happen? And if we go this other route, what might happen? Then you have to do your bet.
This question is going to be really strange, but it's just kind of like every time I see this celeb, this whatever, B celeb, I'm like, how did, this brand make the decision on this person? Because, what are they truly associated with? What does the consumer think when they see this person? And I think it was Pete Davidson, where he's like, he was dating Ariana Grande, or he was married to her, and then he's dated a whole sequence of other celebrities. And he has this really, it is a very specific kind of persona that he has, but yet I see him everywhere. So
Yeah.
what is that? Like, why are brands choosing? And is it because of that? Because it's like, oh, here's someone who is going to stand out in people's minds.
Right. I mean, celebrity is a high risk, high reward lever or tactic to use, and it works for some brands and some other spend a lot of money and they don't get a big impact out of it, right? But if it matches your voice and if you're using it as a means to an end, it matches who you are as a brand or helps you bridge to an audience maybe you struggle with before, right? Either reinforce with an audience or maybe you're trying to reach a different kind of audience. So the celebrity is kind of like a channel. They're kind of a big bird. They're kind of a transition or translator to that audience. That can be helpful. You also get some amplification out of it, right? You get a lot of extra. It's hard to break through nowadays. So celebrity can help you do that. It can help you restate your message. Repetition is very powerful in persuasion, and people may not like that about the repetitive commercials. But seeing the celebrity over and over, like it will stick. There's the downside too, right? Does it stay with them or does it rub off on the brand and how much of that is? But there's a whole science behind celebrity, how you make a criteria, how you choose, how you vet, how you use them. So there's a whole architecture. And I think most companies are professional. They're making choices, they make mistakes, but most of us are pretty grown up and know how to do it. It's a powerful lever. Done right, it can have really big rewards, like winning over new audiences or reinforcing with your core, staying fresh, right? That's hard to stay fresh, staying timely, being interesting and breaking through, getting extra amplification out of it. Those are all good problems that celebrity can be a shortcut to.
Mm-hmm. Have you worked with any clients where you're trying to target a very specific segment? It could be, ultra high net worth, for example, where it's like that's a smaller segment and folks in that segment are very discerning. So this gets into precision targeting. How do you go about doing that in terms of you would be given a very broad, mandate where it's like, here's our client base and we want to try to get into their minds and psyche. Where does the process start?
It starts with a deep understanding of your audience, right? Like what makes these people tick? What are their needs? What are their unmet needs? What has worked before, if anything? I mean, high net worth I've worked in. It's tricky. It's not hard to understand them. It's hard to reach them. There's not a lot of magazines. A lot of the conventional things of how to reach someone. I mean, there's golf, but like that's there's a lot of convention about how to do that. But you do learn it's not just them, right? It's the buying circles. It's who influences them. and this is true in B2B advertising as well as high net worth or any interesting audience, it's not just who you're talking to, it's who also should you be talking to. That's the connective thread. And then how do you come up with the right value proposition for all those people? But it is, you start with understanding. I mean, a lot of AI tools right now are making it a little bit easier and a little bit faster to be able to get to know audiences, even narrow ones, a bit faster and more efficiently. You could do the focus groups, you could do the large surveys, the large, u.gov pulsing, but you can also create like-minded bots based on the same people, and you can understand them very quickly. The trick with is a lot of it will be based on past data. What a lot of us need is present or future data and not just be reliant on the past. So there's a little bit of danger in that too. But yeah, understanding, I think that's something I really appreciated getting to know in consulting and also in advertising from the strategic planner. That's the consultant role inside the ad agency. It's very similar, but it is about customer understanding.
How should folks in the corporate space think about profit when they're like deciding amongst, say, a handful of firms and saying, this is who we're considering in terms
Right.
of advising us on marketing strategy? What should they think about? Like, how is profit differentiated?
Profit is a strategic and creative firm. It has some of the aspects of being a kind of a boutique. It's 500 people, so it's smaller than some of the MBBs, right? Or a lot of the bigger firms, but it's also the rigorous of a management consultancy. I think whether we're working with like a marketing leader or a growth leader, not all our clients are marketing leaders. They're also business and growth leaders, division leaders too, is what we try to do is help clients like unlock what we call like uncommon growth. So uncommon growth, the way we define it, it's high impact growth, but it's not only exponential. It's sustainable. It's faster. It's smarter, a little more clever. It could be surprising growth, but it's also sustainable, and usually over a couple of years or for your category. It's more human and it's more actionable, which I mentioned earlier is about you can act on this. And so we're not a firm that just, is like supply chain or cuts people and just looks for efficiency. We look for this idea of helping you unlock uncommon growth. Maybe you need a different approach. Maybe you've tried things before and you need some other people to look at it in a very different way. We do have a strong bench in brand and marketing. David Ocker, our vice chair, is known as like the father of modern branding. And we understand the brand is an business asset. And so you can transform, and brand is one of those tools to do it, both inside and out in your culture. But growth strategy can be tackled in a lot of ways, but it's this kind of uncommon growth that I think even in times like this is still very much necessary.
Mm-hmm. I could see how you're hosting a podcast because like you're very good just conversationally. I feel like I could have a conversation with you for hours. Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So I actually have two podcasts.
Okay.
One is called Rising, and it's about marketing careers. And I do this with Josh Boaz of Direct Agents, and we interview rising marketers. Sometimes we do the CMO, but we also like to do their number two or someone up and coming and what's their career story and what could we learn from it and who do they thank in their career. So we think it's really emotional. We have this thing called thank you notes where everybody thanks a guest. It's my favorite segment. My second podcast is my great love, which is called Cityit, idiot with a C. And it's about moving from the city because I moved from New York to the Hudson Valley to the farm country. And it's all about the city boy figuring out like what's a sheep versus a goat and what's a wrench and, why is nothing open on Mondays? And it's more of a humorous personal journal about moving somewhere new and getting acclimated.
Yeah. And is there ever a desire to move back to the city?
Every now and then until I'm in the city. So, I'm down there every other week for work or something like that. And,
right.
We'll visit there and stuff. But I don't know. I don't know I think the city was a great chapter and I believe people should have new chapters. So I think part of the excitement is to try something new. I think trying another city, I've tried to live in other cities for like a month or something. Mm-hmm. That's a great thing I would keep doing. But I am really used to the quiet now. Whenever I hear like the jackhammer, like in Manhattan, it drives me crazy.
Okay, we're coming up on time. I do have a few final questions. Maybe we'll do this kind of like rapid fire.
Okay.
One is that I'll sneak in. This one is a unique one because we both went to Cornell. Favorite memory at Cornell?
Besides the world's largest lasagna,
yes,
I would say we used to have the Green Dragon Parade, where you would like march the dragons and the engineers versus, and they would like burn each other's dragons. It was a very exciting, unifying day around something the students were creating.
Excellent. Okay. Person who has had the most profound influence on you?
Oh, this is a good one. Mock Aram my group creative director at Ogilvy when I joined Ogilvy Interactive in 2000. He was unlike any other boss I ever worked for, and he was a designer. And since I was such a writer's writer, I felt like he really helped me appreciate design and look at the world in a very, very different way. And he also had the team's back. I also did a lot of role modeling as what it was like to be a supervisor. And as you started to manage more and more people, which was very useful later when I realized how important your boss is when you are not in the room. Mm-hmm. And he was someone that really role modeled that kind of behavior.
Excellent. Last question. Charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
I probably should say a charity, but I think it's podcasting. I think I'm just nuts. I joined the Podcast Academy. Whenever I judge award shows, I always ask for the podcasting category instead of the TV commercial category. It's, I started in radio, so audio is my great love.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. How appropriate. Well, Matt, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, RJ.